It is time for Around the 412 with Smitty and Tyler.
Welcome back to another episode of Around the 412. I'm Tyler. With me, as always, is my co-host, Smitty. Go follow us on all of our social medias at Around the 412 over on X, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, Threads, because we technically have it. But if you have it downloaded still, you're probably a sociopath. But go check us out on Around the 412. Also, go check out Game Changers. It's our new clothing sponsor that we've got at GameChangers.la and Pick6.la. Pick6.la, probably explanatory itself, but that's the football stuff. Everything else can be found over on the GameChangers.la site, and they've got literally everything, all the sports you can think of, several athletes throughout all those sports, and they've got some pretty sick graphic tees. Are they oversized tees, or are they pretty standard size? I'm asking you because you have a entire walk-in closet full of them.
Yeah, they are oversized, and I have 26 of their shirts. So, yes, my favorite are the pepper and the ivory designs. Those are the ones that are actually. Let me walk back a statement I just made. The pepper and the ivory are oversized. The other ones are true to size. So okay. I own pretty much all pepper. I have a Lemieux just gray one. I have a Victor Wembanyama black one, and I have a Kurt Angle white one. Other than that, they're all pepper.
Okay.
So
yeah.
I have like 23 pepper, and then the other. But
yeah, I mean, you're a husky guy. You need that extra room. So you can use code AT412. You can use code AT412 at GameChangers.la and Pick6.la for $10 off of your order. That's pretty sick. That's more than 10% if you're confused about that.
And
so go check that out.
This is the Steelers show, so we should mention they put out a post last week about it, but they just recently did a new Justin Fields design, which is pretty sick. So be sure to check that out. And I know that they are cooking up at least 2 more current Steelers ones. One was a free agent addition this past offseason. The other one is literally just because of me requesting them to make one for this player so I could wear it to his football camp. But either way, 2 new Steelers designs are on the way in the very near future.
Gee, wonder who that is.
Yeah. Also on the channel somewhere. So go check out that interview. If you can't tell, we're talking about Pat Frybooth.
Might have got on ESPN. I don't know.
Might have been on ESPN. All right. Well, it's been a couple weeks, really, since we talked about Steelers football. Tyler, your last appearance on here, actually, well, other than if you've watched the Penguins or Pirates episodes this week, obviously you've already seen them. But Tyler, not being on the channel since night 2 of the NFL draft, has not talked about his thoughts on the draft other than Troy Fautanu, that selection in the first round. So I'll give you the floor for a few minutes, talk about their entire draft haul, what we saw them do on days 2 and 3 of the draft, what they came away with. Did they check all the boxes? What do they still need to do?
I think they checked a lot of boxes. And yeah, that night 2, I saw it was... We had just gotten back to our Airbnb and just laying down, relaxing, getting ready for bed. Saw the draft show was starting pretty soon. So I got ready for bed, and then I hopped on, was on there for like an hour and 40 minutes. It was pretty sick. I was happy that I was able to be on there, even if it was just a little bit. I was literally like 6 hours ahead from the East Coast. So it was pretty late when I was watching all this happening. But I stayed on there until Zach Frazier was selected by the Pittsburgh Steelers in the second round, which is pretty cool. But I'll just go through and give my quick thoughts on the picks. So Troy Fautanu in round 1, did not think he was going to be there. And I feel like that's a pretty common opinion. I thought anywhere within that like 13 to 17 range was probably his sweet spot of being selected. And I think that if you told me before the draft that they were going to have the chance to take them, I would have said you're probably wrong. And the fact that they were able to, without having to move up or anything, I feel like that is just a perfect pick.
Best case scenario,
probably absolute best case scenario. And I know, like you were saying.
I mean, unless you want to say Marvin Harrison.
I was saying yeah. But you were saying Amarius Mims. I was saying Amarius Mims. I was expecting Amarius Mims, even like still going into the draft and following some of the draft picks before I went to sleep that night. I was still expecting Amarius Mims. ends up going to the Bengals, but then Troy Fautanu falls to the Steelers. I feel like it worked out perfectly, and I'm so excited for this guy. He's a Steelers fan, which I feel like maybe being a Steelers fan prior to the draft is something they also look at. Like if you have brothers in the NFL, or if you like brothers are athletes or whatever, families of athletes, maybe they just like look at some guys who like the Steelers and are part of that Steelers mentality and understand the culture a little bit too. Because I feel like that's been like a trend like recently, that the Steelers fans are also being drafted or signed by the Steelers. But I'm really excited about that pick. Immediate. I think that there was a question of, depending on who they draft, are they going to overtake Dan Moore Jr. for that starting spot? I feel like this is going your starting tackle, and you're going to see him and Broderick Jones. Depending on, I mean, I don't know if this means that Broderick Jones is going to flip sides anymore or not, but we'll see. But I do think.
What do you want to have happen there?
I personally think that Broderick Jones is probably best suited to just stay on the right side and have Troy Fautanu be your left tackle.
From a skill set standpoint, absolutely. Troy Fautanu is the better pass protector, and Broderick's strength is in the run game. That is normally what that means in terms of where they play.
Yeah.
So I would agree. I think despite, the size concerns, Fautanu only being 6'3", the arm length was fine though. Like I know there were some people that like were worried about guard, and then the arm length is fine for a tackle. The pass sets are just so clean. I think like everything is just so refined with his technique. And he's a guy that can move extremely well in space to make up for where he does lack a little bit in terms of the length. So for me personally, I would go with Fautanu on the left and Broderick on the right. Based off their comments about wanting to get Broderick on the left, I think it's going to be the opposite. So yeah. I think it should still work. I would try, and they have time. Like they don't need to answer this right now. They could figure this out in training camp. But I would be going into training camp with the idea of Fautanu on the left and Broderick on the right. I think so.
Yeah. So next pick, Zach Frazier. That was the one pick that I was actually on the live draft for. Can't say that I saw the pick happen because I was only on my phone. I didn't have a TV in front of me watching the draft or anything. But that was probably the most chalk pick for the Steelers, especially leading up to it, the way the board was following. If you would have said like pre-draft Zach Frazier to the Steelers in the second round, most people would have probably been on board with that, probably would have agreed with you. And then just the way that the board was following out, I feel like there was a couple good options that they could have had at that pick. But Zach Frazier's just, it felt so chalk. And center, I feel like they needed to get a center in this draft, whether that was going to be in the first round or second round. They needed somebody that can anchor down that middle of that offensive line in an Arthur Smith offense. And so I think that this pick, great pick in and of itself. Zach Frazier is an absolute dog of West Virginia. That is who I would pencil in to be your starting center from day one going forward. I don't know who else it would be, but I think that pick was great. Another surprise pick, just because I didn't know that they were going to fall to 84, is Roman Wilson, being the third round selection. I thought he would have been selected a little bit earlier than where the Steelers were picking there.
He thought he was going to be taken at 51 to the Steelers.
I'm excited about that pick. I think that Roman Wilson, and I feel like we talked about this, whether it was on just like between the two of us or whether we actually said it on a Steelers show, that Roman Wilson was one of those guys that like felt like they could be a Steeler based off of like Arthur Smith offense and wide receiver fit. Like that is one of the guys where you watch that could fit what they're trying to look for as a receiver.
I was told he was Zach Kazani's favorite wide receiver in this class. Like I woke up, I guess I didn't send you this, but I woke up after night one and someone texted me and said, with the way the board looks, it's Roman Wilson or center in round 2. Well, lo and behold, they got their center in round 2 and then Roman Wilson later on anyway. But I knew that they loved him. Like Zach Kazani, this is his type of guy. Not the biggest dude, so he's not necessarily the greatest blocker, but in terms of like a willingness to do so, like he doesn't care about putting his hat on a hat. The willingness is certainly going to be there. And I know that the Steelers and the fan base is going to appreciate it. So I'm super excited about his fit. Also the speed that he brings like to the table, like that probably flies under the radar a little bit. I will say, don't think he's necessarily a guy that you're going to say, hey, go line up on the outside and win. I think he'll see pretty much most of his reps come from the slot, which is fine. They're going to have to get somebody else to play opposite of George Pickens on the outside. Still love the addition of Roman Wilson. I think he does a great job of just understanding coverages, knowing when to sit down in soft spots, and understanding leverage. Decent enough route runner, certainly to get by at the NFL level. So yeah, certainly excited about his addition as well. But yeah, going into night 2, I had a pretty good feeling that was their guy at receiver.
Yeah. Moving along, the Steelers then drafted, who was it? Peyton Wilson.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I forgot that I was going round by round, and I was like on round 4 already because I forgot they had 2/3. Peyton Wilson, yeah, 98.
Yeah, Peyton Wilson. I'm excited about that one. I think that was probably one of the better linebacker picks in this draft to get, and to be able to get him at what 98. I feel like that was good. And linebacker is a position that questionable depth behind it. So I think that it's a guy that brings a lot of speed. Clearly, if you watch this tape, and he's not like a thumping running back, but he's someone that can thumping linebacker. But it's somebody that is kind of more of like the new age linebacker. The more speedy linebacker, can drop into coverage, and I'm excited to see what they can do with him. So I thought that pick was great.
He was my number 1 linebacker in the class, to be honest. I know
really?
that there's the health concern. Yeah, I know there's the health concerns, but he finished ahead of Junior Colson and Edgerrin Cooper for me. I mean, 6 foot. There's nobody else like him. Like 6'4", the way that he runs, despite only having 1 ACL, is insane. He can QB spy. He can carry tight ends up the seam, play sideline to sideline. There's a play. I don't remember who it was against, but it was actually on my I have like a little highlight thing that I put together from when I was scouting him before the draft. But like the second play of that video, he comes from all the way on the right side, or I'm sorry, the left side of the formation to the right boundary to make the tackle right at the sideline, like on a quarterback that's getting out of the pocket running. Gain like a yard or 2, maybe. Like just ridiculous athleticism for the position. And to your point, with some questionable depth, we don't know what's going on with Cole Holcomb. Like the Steelers being very mum about that situation. So you're going to need another guy behind Patrick Queen, behind Landon Roberts, that can contribute, especially on pass downs. Because, all credit to Landon Roberts and the job that he tried to do last year in that department. That's not his strength. Great guy coming downhill, thumper, keeps other guys clean. But, what Peyton Wilson's going to be able to offer them in terms of coverage upside is going to be of great benefit. Almost looking at it, I would love to get Cole Holcomb back, by the way. I'm not saying this is like a replacement or anything like that. But you look at last year when they were at their best, it was for a very small stretch of football, unfortunately, due to injuries. But you had Cole Holcomb and Landon Roberts and Quan Alexander. If he can come in and kind of play that Quan Alexander role, I think you're cooking.
Yeah, I agree. I think that this improves your linebacker room a lot, especially from a depth perspective. Mason McCormick, guard out of a small. I don't even know what school he's from. I know he's from a small school.
South Dakota, Jackrabbits.
Oh, South Dakota. Yeah. I think that is another meaty pick, obviously, and a pick that, I mean, maybe guard isn't. Maybe guard isn't necessarily like needed right away, but I always do think improving that offensive line is good, and he'll have the potential to compete like right away is what it sounds like. So, what are your thoughts on it? You say you want to talk about it.
I do, because I'm looking at it like in the short term, could he maybe end up being the number 1 interior swing guy and all of a sudden push Nate Herbig, who right before the draft looks like he could be the starting center, out of a job, where all of a sudden, McCormick is the number 1 swing guy in the interior. But James Daniels going into a contract year this year. Are they going to be able to get something done this summer? I think that they would like to, but you look at just this past off season, with the way that the guard market exploded, Robert Hunt getting $20 million a season from Carolina. Like James Daniels, I don't know if people realize this, still just 26 years old. Like he can make a lot of money on the open market should he hit it. So if the Steelers aren't able to come to some agreement, I think this just gives you somebody in the pipeline as like a safety net if you aren't able to come to an agreement with James Daniels after this year. And the other part is on the other side, where all of his snaps really have come at left guard. Sam All is 30 years old. I know he still has 2 years left on his contract. I think he played fine last year, probably not as good as we were hoping, especially with the way that he had played in Philly prior. But now with maybe more, the way that the strength of the offensive line now is, you get Frazier next to him in either, another year of Broderick or Fautanu next to him on the other side. I think with an upgraded line, he will certainly be better. But I don't know. There's no guarantee to me that he sees year 3. Pretty much all the guaranteed money is going to be paid out after this year. If they want to move on, they can. Say they get something done with Daniels and they would like to go a cheaper route at the left guard spot with their draft pick in McCormick. So I just think one way or another, regardless of which guard spot it is, it wouldn't shock me if he's a starter in 2025. Certainly not in 2024, but it wouldn't shock me if he's a starter in 2025. So I don't mind them taking the value they felt they got at that pick. Insane athlete for the position. Another 9.6 something RAS at the guard spot. Fits Arthur Smith's scheme, obviously, because they need great athletes in that interior. So I don't know. I didn't have a problem with the pick. I expected that to be where they targeted like a slot corner or something like that, but I don't have an issue with them going the route that they did, and thinking about it more with the future of the guards certainly made it more sense to me.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with it at all. I mean, 3 of your first 5 draft picks and 2 of the first 2 were offensive linemen. I have no problem in improving the offensive line, especially considering how they've played the last several
within 2 years. They just completely revamped. There is not, assuming that Fautanu takes over for Dan Moore Jr. right away, if not very early, you're going to have 5 completely different starters than you did, going into before they brought in, like, the longest standing one would be James Daniels. So really over 2 seasons, they've completely reshaped this offensive line.
Yeah, I'm all for it. Then Logan Lee out of Iowa, defensive end. He's one that I knew they had to get some, whether that's going to be free agency or whether it's going to be the draft. They had to get some depth on the outside for the defense. The one concern I have about Logan Lee, and maybe you can shed some light onto this, but I know that there was position versatility, and that's a good thing for players. But I don't want him to be another DeMarvin Leal. Is my first thought whenever I hear that. I don't want him to be a betweener of being an outside guy and being a defensive tackle. I feel like he either needs to be one or the other, and I feel like he's probably built to be a defensive end, like outside edge rusher, more than a defensive tackle in the NFL. But based off of what they said after they selected him, it sounds like there could be a scenario where he could be this draft's DeMarvin Leal, where potential good upside for a player, but they're not going to pinpoint which position he should actually play, and that's going to hurt the player.
See, I think he's going to play in the interior ultimately. I think that they'll have him put on weight as opposed to shed weight and try to play in the interior. He is right now, though, a tweener, like you're mentioning. Like, to me, that's the funny thing, is you're probably looking at him and DeMarvin Leal competing for one spot on this team. When you get to the 6th round and 7th round, especially in this draft, like, this is the last year that was really impacted by COVID, and obviously with the NIL stuff recently becoming so rampant. Like, there's fewer and fewer underclassmen entering the draft, so like day 3 is just so shallow. Like Derek put it, if the guy's got a pulse, basically at that point you can't really say it's a bad pick. But I thought that there were guys, I would have rather them double dipped at receiver with some of the guys that were left, or that is when they could have gotten a slot corner. I'm just not sure what Logan Lee brings, to be honest with you. Another great RAS guy, but he doesn't play like that on tape. The athleticism doesn't pop that way necessarily. Did have 28 pressures, which was 4th in the Big Ten last year. Obviously playing on a really good Iowa defense. It's what they're known for. It's the only thing they can do. Also had 24 stops. So, like, I don't want to say the production wasn't entirely there. Didn't necessarily translate to sacks and stuff. But, yeah, I didn't see the athleticism, the way that he tested, show up on tape. I don't know. I don't think that there's necessarily, I wouldn't be willing to predict that he's going to make this 53-man roster. I think he could be a practice squad guy for sure in year 1. We'll see where we're at in year 2.
Maybe they just looked at him and squinted their eyes a little bit and be like, hey, he looks like a Steeler. And they just confused the uniforms.
Everybody tries to do like the Brett Kiesel thing when they take a day 3, defensive lineman. There's no, I mean, I'm telling you right now, if they get Brett Kiesel out of Logan Lee, then this probably will be even somehow better than the 2023 draft class.
Yeah, well, Logan Lee didn't go to BYU, so that's not going to happen. And then Ryan Watts, last pick, quarterback out of Texas. He also played for Ohio State for a little bit before transferring to Texas. The one thing that sticks out to me, Ryan, right away, without looking at a single snap of what Ryan Watts did is the Steelers now have a type at cornerback, and they're not shying away from it. They want tall, lanky, athletic guys on the outside. And I'm looking at his mock draftable, 96th percentile in height, 94th percentile in weight, 98th percentile in wingspan, and 99th percentile in arm length. The Steelers definitely have a type, and they are very into those tall, lanky outside corners based off of what they've done the last year.
Here's the thing is, like, I fully agree with you. I don't think he's going to play corner. I think they're going to transition him to safety. I think with the speed or lack thereof that he has for the position, despite him like measurably being what they look for in a corner, I think he's going to play in a backup safety role, but I think he's going to be an absolute demon on special teams. Like the traits to me just translate perfectly to that area. Like the coverage numbers and stuff were fine in Texas, but like I think the transition to this defense in particular, I don't think that he's going to be able to survive on the outside. Like, man, if receivers get that release off of him, he doesn't have the speed to be able to make up for it. So, like, I don't know. I don't
40-yard dash compared to not just corners, all DBs is 47th percentile.
Yeah, and I'll be honest, like to me, that's not one of those things where the opposite of Logan Lee, where he tested really well, and I didn't think that it popped that way up on tape. I think it matches. Like I don't think that he looks like that great of an athlete on tape either. So,
then he'll match a lot of our DBs the past couple of years.
Yeah, I still think it's a fine selection because if you get, a core special teamer who can be a backup safety at the back end of the 6th round, that's fine. That's a fine pick. Like you're not expecting the draft starters, at that point. So, I don't know. I thought that those 2 picks were fine. They didn't wow me by any means. Maybe a little bit spoiled from what you even got deeper on down the board in the previous year. Getting somebody in the pipeline like Corey Trice in the 7th round. I know that we lost his rookie year. Hopefully he can stay healthy this year, and we'll see if we have something there. But like that was obviously a lot more exciting to me than either of these day 3 picks that they got with these 2 guys.
Yeah, I would agree with that. But I'm trying to decide whether I think the top 4 to 5 picks of last year or this year are. I feel like last year's probably got to be better, right? Like,
well, I would take
value.
Flatanu. Yeah, I would take Flatanu over Broderick.
I mean, technically, your 2nd round pick last year was Joey Porter Jr.
Yeah, Joey Porter Jr. and Benton compared to Frazier, because that was round 2.
Yeah.
Darnell as opposed to Roman Wilson and Peyton Wilson. McCormick versus Herbig. I don't know. That's interesting to go through it like that.
Back to back years though, where basically your first 4 rounds, you got key players at pretty much all positions.
It's such a cerebral approach, and you got to have like the stones to do it too, because like Omar could have panicked and felt like he had to trade up, but like he just let the board play to him, and it just kept happening. Like it's just crazy how Flatanu just falls, Frazier just falls. Like I don't want to say lucky, because these teams were obviously identifying what their needs were and taking players that they felt they needed to take. But like the fact that nobody else took a center, was crazy to me. I mean, JPJ lasting as long as he did before the Raiders took him. And then once that happened, I got a little bit worried. I was like, are they going to have to slide up a little bit? Because now it is like Frazier or bust at center for most teams, probably. Roman Wilson not wait until 84. Peyton Wilson wait until 98. McCormick probably could have gone higher than 119 as well. But he's, guard, not that valuable of a spot. You aren't going to see ones go super high, but certainly could have gone on day 2 and not been questioned about it. The other 2 were probably taken value-wise where they should have been, but certainly those first 4 rounds.
Something that I want to know, and I don't know if you said this on the live draft show or not, if the question was even asked. Throw positional value in terms of what it means to the Steelers offense out the window. Would you rather have taken Zach Frazier or Adonai Mitchell? Because both were on the board.
Yeah. I don't know what they do about center if they don't take Zach Frazier. Like I know what
that's
you're
why
saying,
I said you throw it out the window and just
I get it.
It's hard to throw it out the window when it's so important.
Let me say this though. I'm not saying I think wide receiver is going to be like, it's stupid to say it's not important just because, we're going to throw the ball less in this offense and it requires a different skill set. But I would have loved to add Adonai Mitchell, but like I don't know what it looks like for him in Pittsburgh right away, especially.
Yeah.
Like I know for sure. So I can almost argue, despite what the positional value is, specifically for the Steelers, there's more value in Zach Frazier than AD Mitchell.
Yeah, that's definitely true. That's 100% true.
Yeah,
especially with the offense are running, the lack of, and believe me, I know we're lacking receivers, but we are lacking a starting center. We have at least a number one.
Let's talk about the receivers real quick. Another receiver added today. Why? I don't know, but they signed Scotty Miller to a 1-year deal. Spent time last year in Atlanta with Arthur Smith. This marks the 4th player that was with Arthur Smith to be reunited with him. Somehow, one of them not Keith Smith, the fullback there. I thought that one was like a given. But Cordero Patterson, Van Jefferson, now Scotty Miller, and who's the other one? Michael Pruitt as well. So those are the 4 that have been brought over from Arthur Smith's time there. This is nothing to me. Like, they added another guy for camp, basically. What I think this is, and Alan and I had this conversation today, they're getting another guy in here that knows the offense to teach the receivers the offense. That's like he's going to be a glorified coach for training camp and then probably not make the roster. And then see ya. So to me, this does not change their pursuit of looking for another receiver. I still think that they are very much in the market. I don't think we're going to see that happen until after June 1st, though, just because of, contract structure. Like if teams are going to, there's a lot of guys out there that could be made available via trade post June 1. So I think that we're going to play the waiting game, and it's either going to come via trade that way, or there might be guys that are surprise cuts when roster cuts happen, and maybe that's what they're waiting for. I don't know. Can they wait that long? I'm not sure. But like I just mentioned with the draft and Omar's patience paying off, I wouldn't put it past them to just like wait this entire thing out.
Yeah, I mentioned to you before we started recording that the Steelers are like collecting all the wide receiver 5s on an infinity gauntlet. I mean, It makes sense that they want people to bring in to basically teach everybody the offense. I totally get that. But man, wide receiver seems very underwhelming is I guess a correct word, but not the word I'm looking for. Like I guess concerning still. And I will give it the benefit of the doubt, and I'll give them the benefit of the doubt and say like I don't think they're done at the wide receiver position. Now, if they get a one of these big fish that people are like hoping for, whether that's like DK Metcalf or I don't think there's much smoke to that. But I feel like that, to me, that I look at something like that and I feel like it's more fan talk than anything. But I think that they definitely should still be looking for a receiver, because as of right now, George Pickens is your number 1. Roman Wilson, the way the depth charts is sitting, has to be your number 2, I feel like, even though he's never played a snap. I mean, is Van Jefferson going to be your wide receiver 2 over Roman Wilson in the depth chart? I wouldn't think so.
I think technically, I would say it's Roman Wilson, but I'll make the argument that it's Pat Freiermuth.
Okay, pass catcher. Then it's Pat Freiermuth. But
yeah,
wide receiver specific, you're looking at George Pickens, Roman Wilson, and then you're arguing over whether Calvin Austin or Van Jefferson is your wide receiver 3.
Yeah.
Whether wide receiver
it's
is important to this offense or not, you can't go into the season with it like that.
Yeah. Which, by the way, is Van Jefferson. I almost feel like these additions are kind of telling that they're not sold on Calvin Austin making this roster. Like, to me, George Pickens, Roman Wilson, Van Jefferson are locks. Let's operate under the assumption they keep 5 receivers because of what we're saying with like the lack of usage for receivers. Plus, Arthur Smith probably wants to keep 4 tight ends. So let's operate under the 5 receiver assumption. You got Quez Watkins, Calvin Austin, Scotty Miller, Denzel Mims, Marquez Callaway, and imagine if they bring in another receiver still, competing for 2 spots right now. If they bring in another receiver, 1 spot. So, like, the additions of Quez Watkins and Scotty Miller to me say, Calvin Austin, you're on the bubble right now.
Yeah. I mean, hard to argue. Who wants a 5'3" guy in the wide receiver room?
But like, I'll be like, it's kind of unfortunate in my opinion, just because I think that Calvin can do more than just be a gadget player. I feel like he can be like, I'll say this name, and I don't know how many people are going to know the player, but like Khalif Raymond, when he was in Tennessee with Arthur Smith, the way that he would use him, like, I feel like he can be that type of player within this offense, but I don't know that he's going to get the shot. Out of the guys I just mentioned, I think he's the best player. Out of Scotty Miller, I think he's Quez Watkins to me is, I don't know why they signed him. I don't see anything there with him. He can't block, has no interest in being on the football field when the ball's not in his hands, and he's not a good enough receiver to have the ball in his hands. So I don't know what that was about, but he won't make the roster. Like, if they sign or trade for 1 more receiver, and again, operating under the assumption they go with 5 this year instead of 6 at that position, there's no way that he's making this roster.
Do you think that if a trade is going to happen, is Ayuk still the most likely target? Or
No.
would you think that they are? So who
I don't think he's the most likely. I don't think he's the most likely 49er.
Okay, so Debo, I would assume.
Or Jennings.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm. I think that's very possible. Because he's an RFA. They haven't done anything with his contract yet other than give him a tender. But his future is still very much up in the air. You don't think that he watched them draft Ricky Pearsall as well, and now he's maybe 4th on that pecking order, 5th if you include George Kittle as a pass catcher, and thinking that he can do more than be that within that offense? Man, I would be the opportunity to come to Pittsburgh and be as high as 2 or 3 on the depth chart. Like, the only guy he's guaranteed to be behind here is George Pickens.
Yeah, that's true.
There, I mean, there's so many mouths to feed. I don't know. If I were him, I don't know that I'm loving the idea of staying in San Fran right now with all those mouths to feed. So, I don't know. I think that's one to watch. I know that they've shut it down for the time being. I still think Courtland Sutton is possible.
Do you think a lot of that plays into the Russell Wilson connection?
I mean, Zach Ghazzani too was his wide receivers coach there. So I think there's there's two connections there. So recently Darius Slayton's. I'll read you the list. This is a list that I've compiled.
Okay.
Talking to, and some of these names we knew, but some of them were brought up to me more recently. So this is wide receivers that the Steelers have that I know that they've asked about to some extent. We know the obvious ones. We've already talked about Brandon Ayuk, Deebo Samuel, Juwan Jennings. I'm the one that put out there about Terry McLaurin, and they were basically told screw off from Washington. I don't see that one changing. They called Houston, which this one's interesting. Obviously have a surplus at receiver now. John Mechie, makes sense to ask about him. He could be a potential roster cut. This is just like, Omar, like, what are you doing? I love it, pal, but what are we thinking they're going to do? Nico Collins. They asked about Nico Collins. Obviously, Houston's not trading Nico Collins. T. Higgins, that was probably like a 30-second conversation with Cincinnati. DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett from Seattle. We'll see if one of those would be ones to watch, I guess, post June 1 as well. Courtland Sutton. Here's the ones that I didn't know. Darius Slayton from the Giants, who's also in a similar situation to Courtland Sutton, where he's looking for more guaranteed money than what he currently got on his deal. There's some word that he won't, show up to training camp without an extension or something like that, or at least more money guaranteed. What's that?
I said he'll fit in to the Steeler culture.
That's the thing. Like, I think that he's a decent player. He's like a borderline wide receiver 2 or 3, but like, I'm not interested in necessarily giving him an extension. Like, I don't know who he's also not like that guy, pal. Like, I don't know what we're doing here talking about how much money are you trying to get? I don't know. So I'd be interested in it. And how about this one? Prior to this guy being traded, they talked to Buffalo about Stephon Diggs.
Really?
But they didn't want to part with a 2025 second like Houston did.
Would you?
A 2025. So my bigger issue is probably with the salary than it is with the draft pick. The 2025 second for what he brings to the table, sure.
Yeah.
But his salary sucks. And I know that like they've kind of amended it in Houston where now he's now a free agent after this year. He's basically just on a 1-year contract this year. So I don't know. I guess if you could do something similar and make it work, sure. I also don't know that that's the guy you want to bring in. Like we're talking about like why was Deontay Johnson traded? It wasn't for football reasons. I feel like every year there's something with Stephon Diggs. Is that the guy that you want to have as grooming George Pickens in that wide receiver room? I don't know. As a football player, certainly I can get on board with it. And I'm not claiming to know everything about Stephon Diggs' situation. It's just literally every single year until he got traded, we were hearing something. Like there was always something going on with Stephon Diggs.
I don't know that I want any older male grooming George Pickens, if you know what I mean. But I feel like with all these talks about potential cuts and cap casualties, we should bring up the cut where you can download the app on your phone for Keeks Barbershop. Search Keeks Barbershop on the cut and schedule it with Christian. You can get a haircut there at 401 Burkich Way, Suite 2 in Beaver, Pennsylvania. You can schedule with Christian because he's appointment only, but if you don't have time to make a schedule and you just need to walk in, you got Tony and Ashley also there at Keeks Barbershop to help you out. So go check out Keeks Barbershop, 401 Burkich Way, Suite 2 in Beaver, Pennsylvania, and you can hook you up with a sweet haircut. Smitty's going to be missing those soon, but don't worry, the beard's still going to be growing.
Beard will still be going. Yeah, my hair's kind of grown back in already. I'm going next Saturday for a cut at Keats Barbershop, 401 Burkich Way, Suite 2 in Beaver, PA.
Listen, I know it was a mediocre transition. We don't need to talk about it,
yeah,
but I had to get it in somewhere. And we were talking about like
great
cap cuts, you know.
Yeah, I mean, okay, yeah, I got you. It made sense. Let's talk about Najee. Najee did not have his 5th-year option picked up, which will make him a free agent after the 2024 season. I feel like I'm in such a weird spot with this because everybody seems to be so far on one side of it, where it's like people are like, oh, he's a running back, near $7 million. This was an easy decision. This was the right one to make. And then everybody else is like, this is horrible. Like this is Omar's first miss. What are we doing? This is the leader of the clubhouse on the offense. He's been, their pulse when they didn't have an offensive line. He did what he could, 3 straight 1,000-yard seasons, carrying the offense. I'm in a spot where I was like, I don't care what they do. Like one way or another, I'm not going to care. Like if they picked it up, fine. I think that based off everything, him getting dropped into a really bad situation his first few seasons, them not having the offensive line in place, drafting him in the first round, dropping keys into his hand and saying, hey, fix our run game, despite you not having the offensive line to do so. They thought he could just do it on his own. I thought he gave it his all for sure. Now, granted, wasn't very efficient for his first year and a half. Certainly has been a better player since then. But also, you found a guy as an undrafted free agent in Jaylen Warren who's been even more efficient than him. Now, it's kind of been, I won't say the same situations for the two, but it's also not the same situation in terms of the salary that you're going to have to pay them now and down the road. So I don't know. I could have this conversation all day. I can make an argument for it on both sides. I didn't care which way they went with this. I was surprised by them not picking it up, but I wasn't necessarily upset by them not doing so. Somebody asked me, do you think that they're working on an extension? That's why they didn't do this. No. If they valued him enough to sign him to an extension, they would have valued him enough to pick up the 5th-year option, in my opinion. I think he's going to play this season. He is going to walk. They're going to sign Jaylen Warren to an extension, and they will draft a running back to pair with Jaylen Warren or sign a free agent that kind of matches the mold that Najee Harris brings to the table. That's how I see the future at running back, at least over the next few seasons.
I think I agree with you. And I'm kind of in the middle on this. And I know that I've been pretty adamant and pretty outspoken about how I feel about the running back position. I'm not going to be on one really far end of one side or the other on the Najee Harris argument. I do think that he has brought a lot of value to the organization. I do think that he's been a good player for the first 3 years as a Steeler. But at the end of the day, I am also for not paying any running backs, at least a larger amount of money. So while I'm fine with it, I understand the negative sides to it. And I also agree with you where I think if an extension was going to be taking place, they would have picked up the 5th-year option, and then that 5th-year option would have been bought out with an extension. And that would have just been the first year of the extension year. And so from that perspective, I think I'm in agreement. The full way. I don't think that Najee Harris is going to be a Steeler in 2025. And I think that you're going to be rolling with Jalen Warren and then somebody else. And I think that
also should mention 2025 running back class. It's nice.
Yeah.
Like it's the opposite of this. The draft class next year is basically the opposite of this year. Like the QB class isn't as good. Tackle's not as deep. Great defensive line class. Really good running back class.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think it works out in a way that the Steelers could do that. And now is near $7 million a lot if they did just pick up the 5th-year option and it didn't extend them. I don't think it would have been a lot that they couldn't have done it, but I understand them not wanting to do it either. And so I'm kind of caught in the middle in this. I like Najee Harris as a player. I like Najee Harris as a person and what he's brought to this organization, but I also understand the business side of it. I understand the Steelers' perspective of it, how you could bring in Jalen Warren. And, it's a tough situation to be in. Maybe not necessarily from the organization, but at least as a fan to me, like I like the player, but I also think it makes sense for the Steelers organization. And so despite me liking the player, like Najee Harris to me is one of my favorite Steelers currently on the team, especially offensively. He might be my favorite player offensively on the team as far as like player person, like the whole package. Mm-hmm. But when outside of that, and when I look at the position itself and the organization itself, I can separate that and look at it differently. I don't feel like a lot of people can do that, but maybe it's the wrong decision. Maybe it's the right decision. I'm not one to really call it that, but I don't disagree with what the Steelers did, but I don't necessarily, I'm not like wholeheartedly agreeing with it either. Just kind of caught in the middle.
I think this is a great example of the differences between this regime and the last one. Like this one decision, because I feel like Kevin Colbert regime picks up this 5th-year option for sure.
Yeah.
I think more so than just like identifying good player, bad player, because I don't think that they view Najee Harris as a bad player just because they didn't pick up his option. I don't think that's the case at all. I think this is just a case of this new regime just being so like having the foresight with the way that the league is trending and valuing positions in certain ways. We know that the running back position, I'm not like, it's just devalued. It is what it is. Like, I'm not trying to say these guys should get every penny that they can. Absolutely. But Omar, we've seen it through the draft, how different that they draft as opposed to the past regime. And now we're seeing it in these types of situations where they know that they can get similar production for not spend as much to do so, whether that is through the draft or free agency. They don't need to spend $7 million on a running back.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's my main takeaway is just the difference in philosophy that I'm watching play out in terms of the roster construction.
Next year's draft. Mm-hmm. If you want a player to play similar to Najee Harris for the Steelers and complement Jalen Warren, out of someone I'm familiar with, I would take Ollie Gordon.
I thought you were going to ask me to give you. Okay. Ollie Gordon. Yeah, he's certainly up there. Probably, I would say consensus RB2 right now. For some people, he might be one.
Behind Judkins?
Yeah. Quinshon Judkins at Ole Miss. Most people have him in like the top 30 overall players, which for a running back is incredibly high. Like you're talking about borderline first rounder there, obviously. Mm-hmm. Omarion Hampton's a good player. Obviously I'm familiar with Travion Henderson, Ohio State. Etienne's brother's going to be in that class. Who's the kid out of Boise though?
Ashton
It's
Gianti.
Ashton something.
Gianti.
Yeah.
I had him 2 years ago. So I guess the 2022 season on my college fantasy team.
But if they're looking for like a Najee Harris replacement in terms of like the style as well, Donovan Edwards out of Michigan is probably a guy. Also, because even though we're talking about these guys at the top of the class, do we want them to spend like a second round pick on a running back? I would probably be more so looking at like maybe the third round is where that conversation starts.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Donovan Edwards would be a guy right now if I had to answer with somebody that I'd be looking at.
Yeah. I only said Ollie Gordon because I'm very familiar with him watching Big 12 games.
I mean, Ollie Gordon's sick, but like he's probably going to cost them their second round pick.
I watched Ollie Gordon in person score 5 touchdowns against BYU.
Yeah. But you would think that's probably a second round pick, and I don't even like probably early second.
Yeah, especially I mean he's probably like a top 50 pick.
Yeah, I was just say top 35, 40, but I think he'll be the second back off. I mean, we're sitting here right now trying to forecast how this is. I mean,
we're 2 weeks after the draft. we're talking about our next year running back draft class.
Yeah, but it is a great draft class. There's probably
but at least we probably spent more time talking about next year's running back draft class just now than most people talked about this year's draft class in totality.
At running back?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, there were some decent backs, but there wasn't like 3 down guys in here. Like, I don't know. Brooks could be a nice player for sure. I have Trey Benson on a dynasty league. The Cardinals took him, but it's more about situation than anything else. Like, that's why I took Benson, was because James Conner's probably going to be gone after this season. So, and in that offense, with the way they're starting to get things going, I really like what Arizona's doing as of late. As crazy as that sounds to say. I think they've had back-to-back really good draft classes. I don't like Gannon. To me, was an okay coaching hire. I would have rather them gone the offensive route, but like his staff is really where you get me. Drew Petzing, I think, is an awesome offensive coordinator that they brought over. So,
yeah,
I'm kind of excited about the Cardinals' future.
Steelers show, by the way.
It is. But I don't have anything else Steelers related unless you do. So,
no, I don't. I'm currently sitting here while we're talking, looking at a 2025 big board. So you can see that my mind is currently not on the show anymore. But if you want to go check out our last sponsor that we're going to bring up, it is just popped up above my head over on YouTube. You hear about it all the time. Everything Custom Designs. It's our friend Haley Wagner's small business. She does customized clothing for you, but she can also do some customized like drinking wear. So she can do customized tumbler, which Smitty has. She can also do customized shot glasses, mugs, sippy cups for your kids and everything like that. So go check her out. Everything Custom Designs. Get some customized clothing. Get some customized around the 412 merch and start repping the band like your boys and like Pat Fryermuth. No hats though. But like I said, yes. I think I said it on the Penguin show. Maybe if we get her enough get enough orders for her, she can get that merch going and be able to afford something to get hats going for the machine one day. But as of right now, no hats. And every time you order from her, bring up the fact that you want a hat. Just don't say where you got that idea from.
Be like, once you got it, be like, hey, love the shirt, turned out perfect. By the way, do you do hats or like something like that? It's that simple. We'll see if it works. But yeah, I know it takes like a whole different machine or something. But right now, t-shirts, hoodies, glass tumblers, started doing keychains as well. Mother's Day, I know that she was doing some stuff for that. Father's Day next month, you did a jump on that stuff. Going into the summer concert season, she can do custom stuff for those as well. A lot of great stuff. And again, as Tyler mentioned, you can get artist stuff there around the 412 merch. Hopefully some new designs coming there in the near future as well. I want to try to relaunch some of the older stuff that we got, maybe give it a modern look. So we'll see what we can do, hopefully in the near future. But that's it. So like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, hit us in the comments with your thoughts on anything we talked about. More than anything, would love to get some opinions on the Najee Harris stuff and see how it reflects on YouTube as opposed to on X, because X obviously very hot and cold on the Najee Harris stuff. So let me know what you guys are thinking on that. Leave us a 5-star review and subscribe if you were listening somewhere else, Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts from. Of course, follow us everywhere at Around the 412. And until next time, we will see you then.